Hi, I'm Mark Trexler with the Climatographers, and today I'd like to walk you through a short thought experiment about something we might be able to learn from the 2016 elections when it comes to tackling climate change. Now, there's been a lot of work on why climate change has been such a hard nut to crack, and we certainly don't need to go into all of it. But we keep restating the urgency. And so a never ending stream of reports comes out, and they all basically make three key points, although they leave the last one pretty much unsaid. The first is that dramatic change is needed now. The second is there's still time. What's left generally unsaid is that we don't have anything new to suggest in terms of how to overcome all the barriers that have prevented progress so far. Now, Einstein wouldn't be impressed. Even though Einstein didn't actually say this, it's still widely attributed to him, and it's a fun quote. And it's true that we keep doing a lot of things over and over again. The one-size-fits-all communication strategies, repeating the messages louder and louder, arguing over what the solution is to climate change. And what I'd like to suggest that there are some different things we could do that Einstein would approve of. If you look at the Yale Project on Climate Communications, it turns out that there are about 180 million adults in the US that identify as alarmed, concerned, or cautious about climate change. Almost none of them, I would suggest, are fully and effectively engaged in tackling climate change. Now, we also know how to influence people's thinking and how people make decisions. And this particular book I found very insightful a number of years ago, pointing out that everybody, whether you're talking about quitting smoking or launching nuclear weapons, everybody is basically asking themselves the same two questions. Is it worth it to me? And is there something I can do that makes a difference to whatever it is that makes it worth it to me? What they pointed out was until individuals can answer both of those questions for themselves, they won't fully engage on a particular topic and won't fully engage with a particular decision. Now, when it comes to climate change, it's clear that at least some people have answered question number one, is it worth it, in the affirmative. But there are tens of millions, probably more than 100 million people who haven't necessarily answered question number one in the kind of affirmative that would really lead them to engage in an active way, despite the availability of just enormous amounts of information about climate risks. So we have 150 people, 150 million people potentially, that are sidelined because very few people have been able to answer question two with a yes. Very few people believe they can influence climate change outcomes, much less do they have a clear idea of how to do so, including many of those that answered yes on question one. This is a huge untapped resource, I would suggest. What if we could get a lot of those 180 million Americans to yes, help them get to yes, based on the infinity of climate information that's out there, utilizing the best available climate communications science, and in fact, utilizing the technologies that won the 2016 elections. Now, there are three steps to this. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. I'm happy to follow up with you on it. But what I'm suggesting is that in terms of question one, is it worth it? The information is out there to convince almost anyone that it's worth it. And you can see the kinds of variables that can be brought to bear in the left side of the slide. Now, that information can be sliced and diced and delivered to individuals to help them answer question one. We're not talking about any manipulation here. We're talking about getting the right information to the right person in terms of being the information that person needs to make a decision about question one. And that's what the information they need is going to vary by all of those variables you see on the right-hand side. But the goal here is to help people answer question one in the affirmative. Now, the second part is to help them see that they can actually make a difference. And what I'm suggesting here is that each individual has a unique, what I'm going to call a climate action potential. And it's determined by some of the variables that you'll see laid down along the left-hand column. Based on those variables, each person is different in terms of their potential climate change action potential and, in effect, potential climate change fingerprint in terms of what they can accomplish. Now, that potential can be matched to specific opportunities to act, and that's shown on the right-hand side because there are lots of different opportunities out there. I like to think of this in a chess metaphor in terms of chess pieces on the board. There are hundreds of them, only a few of which you see here. But what I'm suggesting is that we can use the information that's out there. We can use the tools available to us today to help individuals get to yes on this question 2A. Now, just as important, and I'm not going to go into as much detail on this, it's the subject of another video, how do we help those people actually make a difference? Once they get to yes on both of those questions, what can they actually do to make a difference? And so what can I do today? What can I do tomorrow? And what I'm suggesting is that of the hundreds of different potential options out there, we can actually score those options at any given point in geography and in time, because different options are amenable to being moved around the chessboard at different times in different contexts. But there are tons of those options. Now, we can be scoring those options on a regular basis, and we can be pointing specific individuals to specific options. We can be matching them to specific options that change over time. As you can see on the right-hand side, there might be one thing in January, another thing in March, another thing in July. There is no one-size-fits-all option for all time for everyone. It just doesn't make any sense to think about it that way. And yet that's the overwhelming way that we actually do think about it in today's world. So the goal of this step 2B is to help millions of people in the most opportune climate action, to help millions of people find the most opportune climate action opportunities that work for them. Now, when I come to the 2016 elections, this kind of profiling and matching of people that with specific interests, et cetera, is basically how the 2016 election was won. The science that we're talking about here is sort of under attack in many respects. This new book by Roger McNamee, which I would recommend, it's a very good book, makes a very good case for the problems of how this technology can be misused into manipulating people through their social profiles and media feeds. Those concerns are absolutely legitimate. But that doesn't mean we throw the baby out or have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I would suggest that 100 people leveraging the right coalitions and with the right resources could accomplish more for climate change than we've seen accomplished in the last 30 years, and more than we've done by simply repeating the same efforts over and over and over again. And I would suggest that we can do it without harvesting Facebook profiles, invading privacy, or manipulating behaviors. So this really comes back to the idea of the book Influencer, which is that if you can get the right information to the right person at the right time, you can influence their decision making because they're looking for that information. We've designed the Climate Web to help with that, and it has all of the information about all these different literatures, et cetera, and you can look into that more. And the whole topic of how do you prioritize the different things you point people to is what I get into with the idea of climate chess, and I'll put together a different video on that. But I hope that this has been thought-provoking in terms of, is there a different way to approach how we're tackling climate change? I think there is. Thanks.